Welcome to the Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe. In this episode, we talk to Paul Keator of Dish Networks about the inside realities for service providers and what he's learned from the field. All right. Hi, everybody. I am Jason Walls, your illustrious host of the Epik Mellon podcast. And here with me is a very special guest, Paul Keator, where we were sitting in a bar one day and had the brainchild to try to do this podcast in the first place. So by episode 4, I finally have him on.
You know, most great ideas, doesn't that really come from over a beer, sit bar after an out conference?
We talked about that. Tim and I were talking about that, about how, like, you know, standards that are written on a beer napkin, right?
Exactly.
All right. So as everybody knows by this point, if you've been listening to the show, obviously Epik Mellon is entirely funded by my employers, QA Cafe. And while that is true, the topics discussed on this show and my opinions do not reflect those of QA Cafe or its management. And I always like to assume that the same is true for any of the guests that, Paul has a lot of crazy stories, and I'm sure that, his opinions about things do not reflect those of Dish Networks either.
No, these are Jason and Paul's opinions.
Yes, very strongly. Okay. And so just as, as this podcast is funded by QA Cafe, I want to talk a little bit about the products that we offer to the industry. You know, we're a software company out of Dover, New Hampshire, and we're a collection of experts in networking. And it's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast. But we make 3 great products in the space of network testing, network device testing, and network analysis. The first is CD Router. CD Router is the industry standard test solution for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi routers, and other customer premises equipment. CD Router contains thousands of fully automated test cases designed by network experts, covering feature validation, stability, certification, and performance all in one. Moreover, QA Cafe's world-class support team acts as an extension of your own, helping you understand the technologies and build better products overall. Our second product is called CloudShark. CloudShark is the way to make network packet captures an easy and useful part of your networking, IT, and cybersecurity workflows. CloudShark helps you work on tough issues together without passing around large trace files, losing data, or risking security leaks of valuable information. And it helps entry-level analysts learn from your senior experts, curate best practices, and standardize operating procedures around packet captures. And lastly, QA Cafe's Passport solution is a fully automated test solution for testing the connectivity and interoperability of IoT and smart home devices. Testing with Passport is as simple as connecting your device, selecting tests, and getting clear pass-fail results with full log data and packet captures to find and resolve bugs before they end up as a bad review of your product. To find out more about CD Router, CloudShark, and Passport, visit us at www.qacafe.com. We've already done the disclaimer.
Great. And Jason, as one of your customers, we do appreciate the tools and support. You know, we use CD Router and CloudShark. So always appreciated the partnerships over the years and, everything we've done. And we always look at it from an accomplishment perspective of what can we accomplish with these tools to make it better. So, and make ourselves better. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. That kind of makes it all worth it at the end.
It does. That's for sure. And you build great relationships, right?
No, and that's where we are, right? Like, man. So it's like just to bring everybody up to speed on Paul. Like, I've known Paul longer than I've worked at QA Cafe. Like, going way back, God, like to the beginning of when I was first starting to go to standards meetings at the Broadband Forum. For me, that was 18 years ago. Which is
I'm not saying it, but you're kind of aging us here, Jason.
It's like I was a grad student when I started going to Broadband Forum.
Yeah, no, I remember. It's back in the days when Tier 69 and everything was getting off the ground. More and more operators and vendors were getting involved. And just to look back and where it's grown today and the worldwide usage and how adoption has become the norm, right? It's actually great to see and been involved in it so long. So Yeah, it's good. It's the
Oh,
evolution.
it totally. The weirdest experience of my life is when I get like a router so I have a Zyzel router at home, right? And when I'm like, oh, I'm logging in and like being like, oh, it's doing tier 69 right now. I like that's my thing.
Yes. Yeah. And then your skeptic side comes in.
I'm telling my wife, I'm like, look, babe, that's my thing.
Exactly. And then you're like, wait a minute, what are they collecting?
Well, see, I have totally like come to peace with the whole privacy thing when it regards to management protocols, right? And so I'll always give people advice like on on this comes up on like the Facebook groups of my hometown all the time in Portsmouth, right? People ask, oh, the operator is going to provide my router, what should I do, blah blah blah. And a lot of people are still stuck in the mindset from, I mean, at this point, it's been a long time. It's mindset from like 15 years ago where people are like, oh, well, they're charging you $10 a month for that router and it's not worth it. And, it's another fee that they're adding on top. And so people start suggesting that you should buy your own. And I have to chime in and be like, no, wait, like there are things they have to do with that product that are helping manage your service. You can't just like you can if you want to, but you're not going to be able to do a lot more than you wanted to in the beginning,
Yeah. I mean, you look at, to your point, operators provide a router for a reason with this type of management in it. It's how they support the customer and make sure it works. I mean, yeah, granted, you could go out and spend $500 on a retail router. Great. But once you walk out that door, that support ends, right? You're lucky you get a phone call, get someone to answer. Right on the other side of it,
it's like voiding the warranty.
Yeah, your service provider is providing you ongoing support, providing you installation support if you choose to have that, or a self-install experience. So there's a lot that comes along with it, right? And then there's also, you got warranties with it where they'll send you replacements because they want the service to work. And again, even when you buy that retail router, typical customer behavior is they will call their service provider for support. And it's very hard to support them if they don't have access to the router to tell them what's wrong, right? They can look at the access network, go, yeah, everything's working. It's great. Thank you. But more than that, it's going to be something within that environment that they need that in.
Right. It's just an invisible wall at that point, right? So I want to use that as a segue, but before I do, I do want to bring some people up to speed a little bit. So we're talking about TR69 and its successor, the user services platform, are protocols that that we've helped develop at the standards body that I go to called the Broadband Forum, right? That Paul goes to too, and they are protocols that are designed, that were invented for the purpose of service providers to be able to manage the devices in your home. Originally focused on the home gateway. And before that, if you remember, it was like, they mail you a CD-ROM to do the initial setup. And
so you'll get a kick out of this.
TR64.
Yeah. So the first implementation was back in old CAP DSL days. It was 128K, 256K, back when the K was cool instead of like, the G's cool now.
Bulletin board services.
Yeah. You literally would have to either use a command prompt to go in, like Terraterm or something else, to configure the router. It's customer to try to get it work, or B, customer, or B, there was some US. Basically, there was some PCI based modems that you would have to install in your computer, crack it open, install the driver, so everything came up right. Then hopefully your service comes up.
Oh, yeah.
So we've come a long way since those days till today and how the technology has evolved. Yeah.
It's crazy. So tell me a little bit. It's one of the things that I've been talking with almost everybody so far is how none of us got into networking on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? So tell a little bit about that story about how you kind of got to be into the world that you're in. And I said segue before because we were talking about TR69 and support and how you used to actually be a field tech, right? But how did you even get into that situation in the first place before we start talking about those weird stories?
Yeah, no, growing up, when you get into high school, you got that decision to make, right? Am I going to make life easy or am I going to make life hard, right? Am I going to put in the hard work now or do the hard work later? So looking at it and, looking through curriculums, it's like, all that. And it was in the beginning. And most people at this time won't even understand what we're talking about, where you had the dial up, right? And you could almost get to a website here and there. There was a few out there.
It's like
Yeah,
load like this.
Exactly.
Images loading
Yeah.
like that.
I just thought it was cool technology, how the people, started inventing it, getting it to work, and even at those low speeds, and not a lot of content to consume or be there. I just found it fascinating. So it was like, you know what? I want to go into building networks and look at that type of,
Oh, so you did do it on
I kind
purpose.
of did,
You're like-
yeah. But I started in electrical engineering. So I went down the electrical engineering discipline, started going through school on that, got through a couple of years of that, and then saw the telecom program, and on purpose went over to the telecom program and started getting into that because I just, like I said, I wanted to build networks, right? I thought it was fun building networks, making them work,
Yeah.
seeing the outcomes of what you're doing. So started doing that, went through college, and then got out of college, as you were saying. I think it's important to start in the field and understand what you're really working on from a hands-on perspective. It sets you up a lot better. So I literally started with testing circuits back in the day, DS1s, DS3s, started with that. And then we started a lot of T1s, eventually every now and then you put that loop back plug in and go, just kidding, pull it back out. If anyone knows what a loop back plug is.
Back when we still used words like
Exactly.
circuit.
Well, if you put a loop back plug in, it kind of looped the circuit back on itself and it lost service and pull it back out. Just So, back in those days, and it was really cool. I worked with back in the day, it was this company, Intermediate Communications, a CLAC, which was really cool because you got to do a lot. They let you experience a lot and had a very kind of a very broad knowledge set you could actually work. So not only that, then we started getting into doing some fiber splicing. So we do our own fiber splicing, which was fun. So I went and did some OTDR work and fusion splicing and worked on new installs. We worked on some troubles, the old, dump truck in the backhoe takes out your fiber sort of deals. That was kind of fun. Went through that and then started, going out and building co-locates. So we would install our own 1.0 DACs, our own timing telemetry systems, our own ATM or frame relay switches back in the day. Remember those words?
Oh, I do. I used to have.
And then Sonnet.
I ended up having to design the test plan for PPPoA
Nice.
at the interoperability lab.
My former life, we used PPPoA for quite a while and then converted to OE. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot over ATM at the time. So started doing that, started selling Sonnet equipment, and that's when we got to do our own OTDR work. And again, did our own splicing, which was really cool to learn that side. And then you'd have to do your own ladder racking and, your rack installs and, wire everything, do the cross connects, do the tie downs too. So it was a really good learning experience to learn the ecosystem inside out, but it also prepared you better, right? So I can't tell you how many times we would take these engineering drawings out to this co-locate, look at them, kind of chuckle, throw them down, go do the whole install, and then, redline everything because it just didn't make sense. But you have to be standing there for it to really make sense and understand it, right?
Right.
And then get everything up and running, work with the NAC and get everything up and running, making sure, the co-locate was visible and they could take over once we're done and, check off and leave. But those were great experiences, getting out in the field, doing a lot of that. Had a lot of great experiences out in the field, some crazy ones. We had one co-locate we were building. God, this was in Cincinnati. And we were in there, and out of the blue, the halon system went off. All of us are just running out of the equipment room, trying to get out of there.
That's terrifying. I have nightmares about that.
I have no idea. We still have no idea what set it off. But then we went back in there. The thing was just covered in white dust and everything else. It's like, all right, we got to go and let them clean this up and come back another day. That's when you're looking at it. It's like, none of us did it right. Nope. Yeah, we don't know what set it off. There was no type of, anything that we were doing that should have set it off. But, you have those crazy experiences, which is kind of fun. So, yeah. But yeah. So yeah, from there, did some engineering work, and then ended up getting on with actually in Arbach at the time, US West, and moved out west to Denver and been here ever since. And it
Oh
was
yeah.
great to grow up there. That's where I started working on actually broadband services and access networks and CPE. And that was back in 2000 with US West and this team, US West Enterprise. And to your point, building great relationships. We have a core set of folks that we still all hang out from that team back then. US
No
West,
way,
yes.
really? And you've all kind of gone your separate ways
Yeah,
since
we've kind
then?
of all gone our separate ways. Some folks have retired. And we did all sorts of different things for the ecosystem. But yeah, no, we all still get together a few times a year, go out to dinner, go camping, go fishing, do something. And it's actually super
That's
cool. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So we have a good group of folks
Oh,
and you
that's
make
super
some great,
fun.
great friends, build some great relationships. And yeah, so back then is when we started working on these old Cisco 675, 678s were command line where you had to actually provision them via command lines. Put them to work at 128K. It was smoking back then. And then, from there, it just kept going up, right? And went 256, 512, 1 meg, 7 meg, right? As the DSL standards kept, moving up and up and up the ladder, speeds kept going up and up and up. And, seeing that evolution from, dial up the first, call it broadband services of, that over 100K. And then till today.
Did you see that meme going around where it was like the internet used to come in over the phone and it sounded like robots screaming, and it was like, okay,
Yeah,
Grandpa.
yeah. Wait a minute. Why is that funny? That was actually our internet.
that sound, like everybody knows
Yeah.
that sound.
Yeah, no, but yeah, no, seeing the whole evolution of the ecosystem and the industry, it's been pretty neat to see. And obviously not only from a technology perspective of all of the, the access technology and the in-home technologies and CPE, but all of the ways people consume it now, right? And utilize it from all the content.
Yeah.
And no, it's interesting. It's been a fun ride. It's definitely, I'm sure, as you're well aware of, for some reason, telecom has these highs and lows we've all been through. But
Yeah. No, it's
yeah,
true.
you ride those storms and keep going forward.
Well, it was the pandemic was just so weird because for us, like, all of a sudden, the stuff that we work on was now, not that it wasn't sort of mission critical for human beings before, but now it was like, that's all, that's it, And so it was very strange to be in an industry that, wasn't getting totally whacked by this entire experience. And in many cases, the opposite was happening, right? Because it's like all of a sudden, everybody, even I know I personally was like, well, I guess it's time to upgrade to a gig.
Yeah. No, the effect we've had on
It's crazy.
On basically the access ecosystem, broadband services was actually interesting to see and watch and participate in, right? So, I mean, a lot of builds got prioritized. Yeah. You're moving things forward a lot quicker, trying to make in-home services better. There was more of a focus on that, more of a managed service focus. Actually, tier 69, 369 comes in, right? So you can actually do that proactive management because at that point you wanted to do everything you could remotely, right? Instead of having to step in the house. So that
right. Oh yeah, you literally had
exactly.
to. Right?
So think of that, right? Back in the day when you were evolving tier 69 and building it and bringing it forward, did you ever think it would be this mission critical thing to keep people out of houses, right?
No, right.
So it kind of came full circle and people started seeing the importance more and more of all the work that's been done over the years. And instead of being,
was there like a lot of people sort of, because we always talk about, in the US anyway, like the number of people I hope that don't have any broadband service to begin with is probably small, but I understand that that's actually not true. Like there is actually a good amount of people out there. Was there an uptick in that, like during the pandemic, where suddenly people were racing to be like, oh, well, I guess I need to do that, or I guess we do need to get that to a bunch of people right now.
Yeah, no, there was definitely focus on builds because it was kind of the opportunity cost, right? There was an opportunity there to seize the market and take it, hopefully get on all the money you're putting into the ground, getting that capital investment, right. Getting that return, right? So that that opportunity for return was much higher. So yeah, you're trying to do everything you can to now start focusing on those builds and getting broadband to a wider ecosystem where, and with that hope of you're going to have those higher take rates, to offset the implementation costs of everything.
Right. Right. And so speaking of the implementation costs, so like how have things sort of evolved? You know, I realize that this is a very large topic to cover, but just in general, like so that people sort of understand what, you know, what the situation, what the realistic situation is out there. You know, we've gone from squeezing everything we can out of existing copper to having all these hybrid stuff to is it now the case that, you know, fiber is is economical enough that it's just the thing that people want to do the most of, or I understand everybody probably has their own balance, but
Yeah, everything's always a cost balance, right? But if you take a step back and look at it, and a lot of telcos, service providers should have made this decision a long time ago. Because if you take a step back and look hindsight, there's a lot of money wasted on, call it, half capable technologies, right? You have to.
Yeah.
You have to focus on fiber. All the other technologies, or 5G, right? 5G is gaining a lot of momentum, a lot of speed, as a secondary. But yeah, you kind of have to focus on fiber and, you know, bring that forward. I mean, it's going to be the technology that serves us for a longer time, right? If you keep putting in any type of copper, I mean, it's got a limited shelf life. You're just gonna and I've seen that, you know, kind of over the course of my career, where I always termed it, I'd rather do less of the right thing than more of the wrong thing. And a lot of people would pick more of the wrong thing because it made numbers look good, right? But it's like, you got to focus. You got to set yourself up for long term and not just the next quarter. But you know how it goes in, you know, in kind of corporate America. A lot of behavior is the next quarter instead of long term, you know, success.
Right. Do you feel like that's sort of shifted?
Well, yes, not because I think behavior shifted. I think because it was a forward shift, because the technology is very clear. Like you say, oh, great, I'm going to go put in ADSL service. People are going to look at you cross-eyed and go, you're going to do what? Right? Where? So it was a hand force.
Don't
change,
tell
right?
Tom.
Yeah, don't tell. It was a hand force change. Right? So yes, I think people are finally starting to shift that into the right decisions, more of the right decisions. But I think it was a forced change because you had no choice. I mean, it's very clear from a technology perspective. It's one of those things, you know. Yeah, you spend a lot of time doing assessments and making sure it's the right thing. But there's other things people spend a lot of time doing assessments, trying to make sure it's the right thing. It's like, just ask. That's an easy one, right? You don't have to give someone $2 million to give you an answer, or give me 30 seconds. I'll give it to you, right?
Right. Plus, it's like, so from what I understand, the most prohibitively expensive part is digging holes, right? Or getting pole licenses and doing all that. It's the physical infrastructure. And I assume, like, if you're going to do that anyway, you might as well make sure that it's the most like future-proof
thing. Exactly. and I don't, you know, you would think they would have more, call it a better operational plan for your field deployments. Working with, you know, local governments and stuff, going, great. What projects do you have coming up? Great. You're ripping up that road. Let me put conduit all down that road. Right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's happening. That's happening in Portsmouth.
Yeah. Because most of the cost, to your point, is from, you know, ripping up roads, ripping up landscape, and having to redo it all and fix it to where it was. Yeah. To your point, the fiber and stuff has become pretty economical, right? So it's, you know, it's cost effective, and it should give you an operational increase as well, right? Because fiber is way more reliable than you know, copper. So
it's right. It's just like from a materials perspective, it doesn't like dissolve.
Right? It works. Most of the time it works or it doesn't. There's always caveats to that. And there's some things with bends and, you know, a bad splice or a bad connector. I get that. But I mean, there's just a handful of things that really should go wrong. So you have to make the right decisions and try to do some pre-planning and save that operational cost where you can. And I don't know how many service providers these days are doing it or not. But I mean, why wouldn't you, right? Hey, I'm gonna rip up these 3 blocks, and you know everything's coming out great,
right? And other utilities already have it down, right? Mm-hmm. So like every single time anything happens in Portsmouth, Unitil is there, being like, okay, time to lay some gas lines, right?
It's time to replace them, right? You're ripping everything up. Let's do it while everything's ripped up. It gives you a better, you know, kind of that better, you know, cost structure going forward, and you know it will allow you to take the capital you have and use it, you know, further.
So I want to talk about the human aspect of that a little bit. Do you find, so two questions. One, because you were talking about a lot of the people that, and this has happened very recently for me too, is like a lot of the people that I originally knew in standards or any of this, it's the number of people retiring in the last several years was a lot, right? Do you find, two questions. One, it's like, do you find that you have enough people who are interested in this world that are able to come in and come up to speed and are interested in doing the work? Is it hard to find people? And what is their sort of attitude when it comes to this stuff? Like, is there a nice generational gap in terms of the understanding of how the broadband world works that is maybe advantageous because they're all coming in fresh?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the later, I don't see that a lot. And really what you're doing here is you're aging us, Jason. People we've been working with are retired. So that means we're 2 steps closer to being that person.
I'm told I'm so young.
You are young looking, Jason. I'm sorry. You are. It's me. I mean, look at me. 3 kids later, I got gray hair and, I never had gray hair. Well, what's going on? Or is it telecom that
look, a day over 34.
You're the best. Next time I see you, I'm going to have to buy you one. Where are we going next? Amsterdam, Paris? Where are we going? We'll buy you a beer.
Porto.
We can do that. But no, when you look at it, what I've, over the years, what I've seen a lot, my opinion, which is one of the biggest, I'll call it constraints that get in the way, especially people planning for access networks and broadband service providers. A lot of it is that shiny object syndrome. They're going after something they're not. Right?
Yeah.
They forget about their core competencies. They start getting into trouble. But then they're focused on all these shiny object syndromes when, your core competency services just don't work like they should. I would help people all the time, looking at technologies and access technologies and, talking about it. And it's like the reality of the fact is, if anyone takes a fiber customer from you, you need to take a step back and look in the mirror, because that technology, you rock solid, you have another problem you need to take a step back and look at, right? And then they just don't. They don't take a step back and say, okay, great. What's really going on? Because a lot of it is, that buzzword and shiny technology. It's like, yeah, those are important as secondary phases, but a customer wants one thing at the end of the day. They want their service to work, and they want it to work well, and they want you to tell them why it doesn't work when it doesn't work, and they want you to fix it. That's exactly what they want.
That's it. That's what I want.
Exactly. That's all I want too. The security stuff is great. You should have that. That's a great value-added service. The Wi-Fi management is great. That's part of it working. You need it, those insights to actually make sure that the service is working as customer expecting. You give them a great experience. And then everything on top of that, right? But you can't go to that and skip your core competencies, which you see a lot, right? And they just think, oh, we're going to do all these shiny object things and it's going to save us. We'd be great. Yeah. And it's like, no, you're not.
So expand on that. What's a good example of that?
Example of
the shiny object syndrome?
I mean, just, how, kind of, I call it buzzword bingo, right? Virtualized, right? We're going to have all virtual shooting in 5 years, right? And everyone's going on this way, but not even focusing on the core competency network. And so, well, wait a minute.
That's a funny one.
And from the beginning of
where he's like, oh wait, you're like, or we go in the total opposite direction.
So that one always made me kind of chuckle, and I would laugh and go, is it me? Wait a minute. So let me get this right. You want to put everything on your access network and bring it back pretty much, but then you say how you don't have enough bandwidth on your access network? Right. Hey, maybe it is me. I'm missing something. Right. But instead of staying on core competencies, they go down these kind of rabbit holes, and half of them don't even go anyplace. And the half of them that do are good. It's just that it's not your core competency. It's the value-added functionality based off of what you're actually selling, right? And then you try to upsell them.
Right.
If you don't have a very stable broadband service that works and support it, how are they going to trust you with those value-added services where you're going to get more up?
I was just thinking about that today because I was writing an article, and I was just thinking about I was writing an article about smart home stuff and some of the BBF stuff that in the smart home that we're going to do, right? And one of the things, I was thinking of all the the reasons why operators are the people to do this, and one of the things that that came up when I was sort of looking around was the trusted relationship with the customer, and I'm like, I don't know. Like there are some operators that have a lot of baggage they have to overcome before somebody's going to trust them with a new
Right.
service.
And think about the baggage. What is the baggage? And when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And when they call, no one can help them get it working. And that is the frustration. It's not because of, oh, look, I have the shiny object over here of security or this value added feature. That is not what they don't like their service provider about. It's about the core functionality of their broadband service working and working well and working when they need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of let's talk about the customer experience a little bit then. So in terms of like service, let's talk about service calls, right? When you traditionally are getting them on things that, you know, what is the frequency with which that it's something that the actual problem is something that has nothing to do with you know, the WAN connection, or, you know, and I will even stretch into the Wi-Fi a little bit, because now, and you know, the idea that the operator is managing your Wi-Fi and providing your Wi-Fi is a relatively new concept, right? At least in the last several years. So it's like, are there times where customers calling with a problem that has that they're calling you because they see it as a network problem, even though it might not actually be, but you know.
Every problem is the service provider's problem, no matter what it is. And very infrequently is it what they think it is, right? So a customer, they could be sitting there going, you know, my VPN isn't working. My service provider, again, they're not letting an application through, and it's really their VPN termination point that's not working, right? So, and anything that a customer sees as a failure, sees it as a failure of their service provider. Not fair, but it is reality.
Well, no, but what's cool about it not being fair, or that it being the reality, is that, you know, the thing that we're talking about, that I was writing about today, is that like, that presents a marvelous opportunity, because if they're going to blame you for it anyway, you might as well take control over it.
And they're going to. That's why so many service providers want customers to use their devices so they can proactively manage and support them. I mean, you know, and that's another area for service providers, in my opinion, don't focus more on, is the proactive support. There's so much data you can glean from a customer and understand how their service is working. Why not have a proactive queue where that's all they're doing is proactively going and solving customer issues? Just do it, right? And you know, and customer issues, you know, show up in many different forms, right? Whether it's an access network issue, a CP issue, because you know how this goes. You know, you have either an application or a device on the LAN network that's just causing the device to go into some type of failure event. You know, a reboot, it's like, oh, it's great. I just reboot the modem and it works. Well, things get rebooted for a reason, right? There's some type of failure event going on in the background that causes that reboot and needs to be fixed. And yeah, that's one of my pet peeves too. If people use a reboot as a long-term fix, it's like, no, man.
No, the issue. Like, that's legitimately a design choice sometimes. Like, what?
Yeah, no, that one drives me nuts too. It's like, no, that's a short-term fix while you find a long-term solution. You root cause a problem and fix it, right? That's where I always instruct my teams. That's what you do. Yeah, reboot, right?
Yeah, we were just talking about that with Matt, you know, because we put out this video a couple of weeks ago about a story that we had where there was another one of our CD router customers that was experiencing this weird, like, it seemed random of a failure of a bunch of CPEs, and rebooting did help, but you don't want to rely on that. And it was only by taking the device in and doing a bunch of crap to it very frequently in a short period of time, what would have taken a long time in the field, to suddenly uncover the fact that it was just, you know, it was Wi-Fi associations. You know, once the device got like 200 Wi-Fi associations, it tanked for no reason, right? And it's like, but you can't, you know, you can't find that stuff, you know, unless you you start pushing the limitations of these things.
And those types of occurrences are actually pretty common, right? That's why if it was that straightforward, if you have a good lab test structure, you would have found it in lab testing. But there's so many thousands, millions of permutations of devices and applications and data streams and everything else that can go on. That's what you see. And the people that kind of crack me up a little bit are the ones that are like, oh, well, you know, someone going in and, you know, connecting and disconnecting in 24 hours 200 times isn't reality. Yeah, but they're going to do it 200 times over a month. You're just making it happen in a day, right? Like, you've never been doing this that long, have you?
Exactly. That's literally what happened, right? It's like you could discover this in a matter of hours.
That's why you're doing it. You're trying to figure out those long-term effects. It isn't about time most of the time. It's about transactions, right? So you're creating those,
Yeah.
transactions at quick succession so you can replicate the problem and root cause it and fix it, right? It's not about that,
Right.
time frame. So yeah, we all run to that,
Right.
right?
And not to anthropomorphize routers, but like sometimes I feel a little bad for what we expect out of
Yeah.
them, and we're trying to make them as cheap as possible, right? And then, like
Yeah. Yeah, and they're expected to work all the time, right? They're expected to work without incident.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, that management ecosystem that we work on through the broadband forum is highly important to making that happen, because you need those insights to proactively understand when there's a problem, start looking, get that insight. And a lot of the times you have to go a second step to, get deeper logs to really see the issue, but it gives you the track of starting to know where to look, right? And start going down the path to a root cause. So
Right. Do you feel like customers are noticing that that's being done?
Friends,
Because the one of the things I always joke about, because it's like, what was it? It came up at NetworkX last year because we were talking about. I was joking that about the old adage that the best network is one that's invisible, but in reality, the operator doesn't want to be invisible. They want to be seen that they're providing an actual service. And so it's like, well, how do you make it so that what you're getting out of the router isn't just the how good looking the box is, which apparently matters, which I found out the other day.
That one I'm still like, huh. To me, it goes basically back to, don't you just really want it to work and work really well? I am not looking at my router every day. My work does not allow me to put it on the counter. It's got to be hidden someplace. So
no, they have some that look cool. They're like, my wife and I were joking about it. You know what we should do? We should go into the router making business and make some that like look like plant holders, like
we can bring it up between the people. We know we have a lot of knowledge to do a lot of things.
No, wouldn't that be cool? Right? Just so for the record, we're discussing this on this show, so this is the first time that this has happened. So the record's right here if we come up with this idea. But I was like, oh, wait a minute, the best place to have a Wi-Fi router is literally hanging in midair in the middle of the room, not against a wall, not underneath something, right? So how can we make it so that it's aesthetically pleasing to be hanging in the middle of the room?
Right. This is the first knowledge everyone's hearing about. Maybe our future patents we may go forward with. So just so it's on record.
Yeah, just so we know. A router hanging in the middle of the room.
Maybe it moves around with you or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. A little robotic router that moves around with you so you got good Wi-Fi wherever you move.
Do you need some more? Serves drinks.
Dual purpose. I like this. Now you're talking. Right?
See?
So I can watch the hockey game.
But so do are customers noticing that operators are doing this now? That it is better, like that. Or is it always, because the problem has been, and I was talking about this with Bjorn in the last episode, that the problem is that the old school way of advertising broadband service was just based on that number, right? Like broadband, you get 300 and this guy gets 100 and it's for this price, whereas this guy's this price. And that was the extent of their marketing, right? And it's so hard to quantify reliability. It's hard to quantify like the customer experience. Is that happening now? Like, are customers being like, oh no, this guy does provide me with a better service overall?
A little bit. I think the service providers need to do a better job of promoting the good things they're doing. For example, like we were joking about this the other day, people talking about, oh yeah, I got this security service. But the funny part is, why am I paying for it? I never have to use it. It's like, well, that's the point. Hopefully you don't have to, right? It's there in the background for you, right? So how does the service provider, translate that value add to the customer so they understand the value they're getting from it, right? And that's where, a lot of people fall short, right? You can do great things, like security service, you're protecting customer, blocking a lot of stuff in the background, but if they never have any type of notifications, then at a reasonable rate, kind of sequence there, they're just never going to know what it's doing for them, right? So some of those customer educational points are important to make sure customers understand all the things service providers are doing for them. And, if you go back to the management ecosystem with gateways and APs and all that stuff, tier 69, 369, all we're doing there. Depending on what form you read, it's good or bad, right? Right?
Oh God, that drives me nuts. And yes, I try to explain to people, and there are some people that are even the people involved in making the standard that I know who are like, no, well, I'm not going to turn that on. It's like, but you're not the target customer.
Yeah,
right? Like the super nerds, like the ones of us who know what's going on and might actually be concerned about that, aren't the target market, right? 99% of people need to have a management service turned on.
Exactly. And, I know what it is. It's on in mine. I'm fine. I just, I'm not doing anything that they, it's fine. Right. And there's consequences to that, which I understand. It's like people look at it, it's like, oh, you can tell when I come home and leave. It's like, well, yeah, that is correct. Because you have this in your pocket.
You're like, oh no, I can't believe that somebody knows that information. Literally every app on your phone.
Exactly. But they know that all the time anyways, because of all the geolocation on the phone and everything else. And I think that's what the dog is for, right? So, but yeah, I mean, it's a very important part of the equation, that management ecosystem, to support people and it's really an expectation from customers that they get supported in the right ways. I mean, you need it. And if you're a customer and you want to be supported the way you feel you should be, AKA, hey, when my service ain't working, you need to tell me, you need to be the expert. Well, that's part of being the expert.
Speaking of which, some of the things that we had been talking about before, the stuff that you ended up experiencing when you went out and meeting actual customers. Right?
That's the problem. Like some of the things the field folks go through and experience, and especially the technicians on a day-to-day basis, right? There's just been, over the years, there's been some interesting ones for sure. I just give you a funny one. We were out in the field. Where were we? In Boise. And this lady, we're helping her, and she kept saying she was having interference with her Wi-Fi. And we're like, what in the world's going on? Let's go out there and figure it out, right? So me and one of my counterparts went out there, and we're working on it. We get there, it's like, wow, this is quite the big radio tower across the street, right? It's like, okay, this is a clue. Something's going on here. So we were working on it, but it was sitting there, and I was pulling data and grabbing the data when it wasn't working, making sure we had everything we needed from the, for root cause analysis, to work with chipset manufacturers and others and the OEMs to make sure that we had the data we needed to give them and say, here's what we're seeing. What is this? And we did find the fix for it. We did figure it out and found the fix and got everything taken care of. But I was sitting there going through it. Sweet old lady was sitting there, and it was her house, and we're helping her. And she's looking at me. She's going, have you been in movies before? She's going, you got a pretty profile on you. And my friend with me, she just starts dying laughing. I'm like, dude, knock it off. She's like, you had to have been in movies before. And I'm just, I'm like, some kind of one in the field.
I could see it.
Win, right? And I heard that for years from him. Every time I'd see him, he's like, hey, you got a pretty profile on you. I'm like, this is great, right? But there's been a lot of occurrences, some really funny, some really weird. We were up in Seattle doing some troubleshooting, and go to this house. This guy opens a door with a black trench coat on. We go in, and literally the only thing in the house is a table sitting in the middle of the living room with a computer and a modem. And we're like, okay, you don't see this every day, right? And I was like, okay, we're going to.
You're like, am I on TV?
No, you have some experiences, right? Yeah, that, dogs attacking you, all sorts of good stuff.
Oh yeah, it was like worse than being in the post office.
Yeah, no,
because you have to go inside.
You do, but again, it's on the opposite side of the equation. It's memories. It's things we all still laugh about now, right? Incidents that weren't of our own making, we just stepped into, but now we still laugh about. And you have those friends in the industry, make forever. Some long lasting friends, and you sit back and laugh about that stuff.
No, it's really cool. It's really cool. I try to sort of explain that it's like a second family, especially because like we see each other regularly, right? Sometimes more often than I see a lot of my friends like here, and it's like, it becomes, we all know what's going on in each other's lives, and, we end up having extremely deep conversations, not about work sometimes.
Absolutely. And some great brainstorming over a beer, right?
Yep.
But it really, broadband really is a small ecosystem. And it's kind of like you said, a family there. It's, everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows someone that knows someone. I always tell people, it's like, you know what, working in this industry, you got to be honest, be straightforward, be honest, keep your word, because everyone's going to know. And once you
Yeah.
lose that, you lose the ability of vendors and others to actually proactively help you and have that trust with you and build that business relationship.
Right.
I know how to beat up vendors. Trust
Right.
me. Vendors will come in and tell you that. But I never did, because I never had to, because I knew how to build a positive relationship with them where it was a reciprocal ecosystem, that, everyone has to come out ahead in order to have a good ecosystem. We've had vendors before, and people laugh and go, how do you do this? We had two OEMs in the lab working together on the same issue because we're dual sourcing, right? No, I'm not going to have them troubleshoot it and then make them do it on their own. Both of you get in here and troubleshoot it and give me the fix, right? And they willingly would do it, right?
Right.
And people are like, what? How? Like, no, because it was an ecosystem based off of our needs as the service provider and what we wanted. We did not put them head to head. It was our ecosystem. We brought them in and fostered both. And we wanted both to succeed,
right.
And made a positive relationship with everyone, even the chipset manufacturer. Some people look at it and it's like, oh, I can never get them on the phone to help. It's like, I never had a time where I didn't get them on the phone to help. Every time I call them, it's like, hey, we have this issue. You need to get on the phone with our OEM and us. And we're going to have a 3-way troubleshooting party, and it's all of our responsibility, and let's do this, right?
Right. That's cool. See, that's cool. Has that changed over time? Because I remember way back when, there were just more, because we've seen a shift where it's like the operators are more involved in the development of the CP than maybe they were in the past, right? Especially when it comes to like integrating middleware or designing their own middleware. Has that changed in the past? Was a little bit more competitive from the vendor perspective and a little bit less trustful?
Yes, but that's not on the vendors. That's on the service provider. It's your job as the service provider to manage this.
Right.
Now, if you look at it, and you'll sit back and probably chuckle a little bit, as the service provider's knowledge base decreases, that cooperation decreases. Because now what do you have to do? You have to leverage more and more on the vendor. And as the vendors get more and more control over your future, they're going to want to, it's human nature, right? They're going to want to grab as much as they can from one another. So now you've created this competing environment. Instead of being, in my opinion, a responsible service provider, a responsible architecture team going, you know what? No, this is our ecosystem. We have the knowledge base. We know what we're going to do. We have the right people. Here's the requirements you're going to do as we ask you. And don't get me wrong, anything we do, it's like, it's a reciprocal, right? Hey, if we ask you to do something, you can share it with someone else. Most of the time, we're like, we're fine. We both benefit, right? It's got to be a mutually beneficial ecosystem. And vendors will stand up.
That's true. It's like a mini standard almost, right?
And then vendors will stand up and help you and proactively help you and enjoy doing it. That's the part, I was talking to someone the other day. I'm like, why has this got to be so hard sometimes? Why can't we all just do this together, have fun doing it, solve and create great things and then go have a beer? I'm like, why does this have to be so hard?
It's like we've already figured out the best way to do things.
Yeah, like if I have to sit here and sell myself because of what I know, then I'm probably in the wrong place. You need to find a new place, right? So you have to create, you have to create that ecosystem as a service provider. Service providers really have control of it, and they're the ones that really have to stand up and do it. And that's where even some of the even some of the new alliances you see going on now, right? Like even the Purple Foundation, service providers pulling even more forward for themselves, right? To have more control. And it's not control in the negative sense. It's control going, okay, we're controlling the ecosystem. We want you guys to be successful partners of ours, but you don't compete. Here's what we want. Help us, right? And we'll help you. And hopefully we'll all figure it out.
Right. It's very much related to what we were talking about before with the whole with trust with the customer, right? It's like here are things that you're going to get that you are already responsible for. You might as well take ownership of the fact that you are responsible for them, right? And that comes into the world of the actual standards and the networking equipment and the requirements, right? It's like you already are the ones that are in the role. Right. you just have to decide whether you're going to like do it.
Exactly. And to me, that's kind of like a business 101 thing. It's like, it's obvious. You should be doing it, right? It's something you have to do.
Right.
I mean, and there's ways to promote that, right? You walk in Best Buy, buy a router, walk out, you're done. As a service provider, you're going, hey, great. yes, we're going to give you our CPE. You get, a 2-year warranty. You get for the life cycle of your customer support on that, along with the service. Hey, we'll come out and do a tech install if you want.
Right.
And if we can't solve it remotely, we'll send someone out to make sure your service is working, right? There's so many benefits you get from the service
Right.
provider. And a lot of them probably just don't do a good job of bringing those forward and defining them on what our value-added services they actually bring outside of just the service itself. And it doesn't have to be, again, all shiny object stuff.
Right.
Hey, we're going to give you this, and, we're going to give you OTT and virtualization and whatever else you want to throw out there. But if you're looking at it, it's like, we're going to keep you secure. We're going to make sure wireless works, right? More importantly, we're going to make sure your service works. And when it doesn't, we know why. And we're going to come proactively fix it for you.
Right.
So
Right.
don't be surprised if you get a phone call.
Right. And now, and then, oh, well, see, and that would be great, right? It's like, and then you take that and you multiply it by an order of magnitude when it comes to smart home stuff, and the opportunity is already there, right? And it's the exact same situation, right? You have, and it's like I always talk about how the uptake has been slow because right now the only people who can do this are DIYers, right? So you think it's almost the exact same as it was with broadband in the first place, where you're saying that, the customer had to log into their router to personally configure it, right? That's the state of being that we're in when it comes to smart home stuff. And it's like the operators are the ones who are in the position to take
exactly,
that.
Right? But I mean, you gotta take a step back and understand, how am I going to participate in this ecosystem, right? Where can I give the best value add? You're not going to overtake the big integrators, but there's a lot of different ways operators can participate. It may not be the full control mechanism, but there are other ways, right? Even from a security perspective, it's a good one, right? You're doing that network monitoring to give them better IoT security. It's not something, other folks can do as well as the operator has the ability to do it, because if you own that,
right. It's like they're in the perfect position to be able to do that. Right. So you might as well own it.
But even to get all those types of things, like we said, you have to have a very good base of core competency. You have to have very good services from your broadband perspective. Make sure the service is reliable, make sure it works. And when it isn't and it doesn't work, make sure you're on top of that and going and solving the problem. So really, at the end of the day, that's number one.
In terms of,
I hear all these crazy things of, oh, they don't want that. They want a pretty router, or they want, lights that do this, or they want, no. I have never heard a person call and on user groups go, God, I hate my service. It's just not pretty.
This router is ugly.
It's not pretty enough, right? Go look and see why people don't like their service providers. I mean, it's very telling, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like you don't have to guess.
No, it's very telling. And it's very telling in, some of the ones that do a better job than others, right? I don't know if anyone necessarily does a good job or great job today. They can if they choose. But there is definitely a lot of upfront work to do. And that's the thing too, if you look at it, if you put the upfront work in, and I know, people like to look at the line item going, oh my God, it's too expensive. I'm not doing all that. But if you do the upfront work, you should get that and then some operationally over time back, or you didn't do something right. Or it's just not implemented correctly. So there is a lot of ways you can go about this, and you can even take, steps, even if it's small steps. Great. You know what? If you have a management system, you're doing proactive queues going, what are we going to look at? Let's look at the way there's one team that looks at the WAN interface, and we're going to do a proactive queue of the top 100 that are really bad, and we're going to start going proactively fix it. Hey, we're going to have, the same thing on the Wi-Fi side. We're going to take the top, 100 worst Wi-Fi users, and let's go proactively call them and get them fixed. Is it cool. A situation where they need another access point? Is it something else? Is there something on their network that's bringing it down? What's going on? Go proactively fix it.
Right. Well, right. Because what's cool is like, when you have, tens, hundreds of thousands of customers, you end up having those data points, right? You can find anomalies.
And even on a single customer, if you sit there and graph the data and you're collecting it properly, you can see it, right? I should be able to tell when a device is walking around the house and all of a sudden it walks into a very bad, RSSI environment where the fire rates are going down on wireless, and there's no reason you can't see that, right? Within, even like the standards, you can do those, value change informs and set that threshold. Anytime it goes on there, I want to see it. Hey, look, with this customer on this specific device at this time of day, they're going into a problem area. Guarantee they're walking in a back room or something. They need an access point. They'll fix it, right? There's just so many things like that. I always tell people, like even with management all the time, you have to break it up into two pieces. There's the management ecosystem, which our focus is to make very robust. Our goal is for you to want things and not us have to go back to new development all the time. Of course, there will be one-off cases where there's an object not available and you have to go do that, right? As long as it's out of the driver, we can go do it. And then, so create that robust ecosystem that'll work across the board. And then the other side of the equation is consumption. You can consume the stuff in a million different ways. It's your imagination. How do you want to imagine it? I can tell you a whole bunch of ways, but is that what you want to do? Because there's a ton of ways to do it, right? We can have engineers that help you if you have ideas going, okay, great. This is what you want to do. Let us architect it the best way because we understand the data points and the values and, how to represent that situation technically the best way and help and solve for that customer.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the use cases are endless, right? You know this. I mean, it's just a matter of, a lot of people look at it and go, hey, look, I stood up my, HDN TR69 management ecosystem 369. We're done. Didn't we do great? We'll see you later.
Won't it work? Why won't it work?
What the data isn't any good if you're not using it, right?
What is it? It's like, what's the best ACS? I'm like, well, you know the answer to that question.
Yeah, exactly.
That there is no answer until you decide what you're trying to do.
It's all based off use cases. What are you trying to solve for? And I always tell folks that even like we'll get, you see people, it's like, okay, great, we're going to do a test plan. And it's like, okay, great. I can tell you from a technical perspective what you want to test. But what are your product requirements? You don't ask them just because you're bored. It's like, I need to know what else outside of the norm you may want to do so we can compensate for it and test.
Right.
That's why you're asking. You're not asking because you just want to make them put something together. You're asking because you want to do the best job you can to hit the test use cases that they would want you would hope they would want you to hit, right? So.
Right. All right. My last question. If you had one piece of advice to give to somebody who is coming into this industry green, what would you tell them?
I always tell people, especially when we're doing something, learn it from the inside out. Don't go on the outside and keep going out. If you can learn it from the inside out, learn the nuts and bolts. Go in the CO, work with a tech for a day, go out in the field, learn what they're looking at every day and take in the feedback they get from customers as well and learn it from the inside out. It'll give you better insights to make better decisions as you're doing architecture planning and bringing things forward. I think that's one that when I look back at it, like doing all the field work I did, I'm so glad I did. Not only was it fun, right? It actually is fun to do for a while and you learn a lot, but now you know it from the inside out, right? Now I have a very good understanding of what our techs actually dealing with.
You too can have the personal experience of having grandmas hit on you.
Yeah, and you have some great stories to share with your friends for a lifetime. Maybe that's the work from the whole thing. Yes. And I know there's a couple of techs out there I've been in the field with going, oh, there's some better ones than that. Yes, there are. Yeah, there's some doozies out there for sure. That just thinking about them are making me laugh here. But, those are, learn it from the inside out. Learn the technology. And it's fun that way too. When you learn the technology and you understand that, it gives you better creative ideas to do different things. So,
all right, cool. Well, thanks for doing this. And I know for a fact that we'll probably have the regular Paul show.
Let's do this. You know what? It's an idea we came up with together over at beer. Let's keep this going. Every now and then we'll check in. We'll come up with a new question set. We can give insights and hopefully a couple laughs about. You got to laugh in this industry as well a little bit. Yes.
You have to.
Like
you have to.
Yeah,
you have to. All right, dude. Thank you very much. And I'll let you know when this is going to get published. And in the meantime, everybody else, the things I usually say, make sure you subscribe to the Epik Mellon podcast on whatever podcast solution you're using and on YouTube, because we're going to put this up on YouTube. We have a backlog. I won't give everybody the exact date of when this is being recorded, but just know that it is pre-recorded. So it might be
my fans are going to demand
it might be a little delay. there might be an entire new set of stories by the time this.
I wouldn't doubt it. Again, like the idiot said, the way this industry goes, I wouldn't doubt it. But thank you, Jason. I appreciate the time.
So yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And once again, own the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them. And I'll talk to you next time.